to today's second California Transportation Commission meeting. It is the second meeting of two meetings, one yesterday and today. We are beginning with item 25 because items 23 and 24 have been deferred to March. So we appreciate your patience. We are excited about the items that we have before us, and we are looking forward to a wonderful day. Douglas, would you please call the roll? Let me gavel us in, and then I'll have Douglas call the roll. So, Douglas, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Burke?
She's on but muted.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Eager.
Here.
I just got word Commissioner Gardino is running a minute late, and we'll see him shortly. Commissioner Inman.
Here.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Here.
Commissioner Liu.
Here.
Commissioner Martinez.
Present.
Commissioner Tavaloni.
Yes, here.
Chair Norton.
Here.
Assemblymember Friedman. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Fantastic. Douglas, would you please read the information regarding public comment and the signage related to public comment today?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome to day 2 of the January CTC meeting. We are again in a virtual environment, and we hope to join you all in person in the very near future. Commissioners, if you have any questions or comments during the meeting, please let us know by turning on your camera and wait for the chair to call on you. You can also send inquiries and comments through the questions tab that can be read to the presenters and audience on your behalf if you choose. We ask that you please mute your microphone except when you intend to speak, and turn your camera off unless you're intending to speak. This should minimize outside noise and feedback. We will do our best to call on each of you in turn. Please only speak when called upon. When you are called upon, briefly state your name and make your point. I would like to ask that no one speak a second time until everyone who wishes to speak a first time has done so. For our presenters, if you're on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. We hope that you will also turn on your camera during your presentation if you have one. Members of the public, we welcome comments from the public. For participants joining us through the GoToWebinar system, please find the webinar panel likely located on the right-hand side of your screen. There you'll find an audio, question, and handouts tabs. Under the audio tab, attendees will have the choice to listen via the computer or a telephone option. Should you prefer computer audio, please ensure the appropriate box is selected. If you choose the phone call option, select the corresponding box and dial a phone number, access code, and audio PIN as directed by the automated system. Please note, if the audio PIN is not entered, you will remain in listen-only mode and will be unable to speak to the Commission and the public should you have a comment. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link and phone number to access the webinar when you register. These cannot be shared with other participants as they are registered to a specific attendee. There are 2 options for participants to provide comments on the agenda. Using the questions tab, type the agenda number you are commenting on and your comments. Commission staff will read the comment on your behalf. Alternately, you may click the hand icon to indicate you wish to make a comment. You will then be unmuted by staff and called upon to make your comment. We ask that you state your name and affiliation before voicing your remarks. Please do your best to be concise with your comments. Please also make sure your comments add new information. If you agree with the comments of a previous speaker, simply make that statement. Since we often have many speakers, we ask that you make your point in 3 minutes or less. If for some reason we have many speakers on a topic, we reserve the right to limit comments to 1 minute. You will not be able to be on camera while making comments. Please note, you may see staff holding up a no public comment sign to let the chair know we have no public comments at that time. This is not meant to discourage your comments. If you have additional comments, please signal the staff by using the raised hand feature of the webinar, and you'll be called upon at the appropriate time. Madam Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think it's important to note that these meetings were going to take place in Stockton before COVID-19 hit. And we are really looking forward to moving around the state and being able to visit so many wonderful areas of our state as part of our CTC meetings in the very near future. In addition, at the end of our meeting, one of the things that I found remiss was that our staff had put together a really extraordinary equity statement and anti-racism statement. And at the end of our meeting, I would like to have that fully read into the record as part of public comment. It is an extraordinary statement, and I would like to make sure that we have it included in this meeting in its full statement. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to our great day. Our very first item today is item 25, the California Transportation Plan 2050 update. Laura and Marlon, we look forward to your presentation today.
Thank you, Chair Norton. Good morning, Commissioners. So tab 25 is an informational item. As you know, Caltrans is in the process of finalizing the California Transportation Plan 2050. Marlon, who is the Division Chief of Transportation Planning at Caltrans, is going to provide an update on the status of the plan, as well as an overview of their response to comments that were received on the plan, including Commission comments that we transmitted back in October. I did want to highlight that Caltrans provided a written response to our Commission comments on January 22nd. That letter has been shared with you and posted on our website. So with that, I will turn it over to Marlon.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Madam Chair and Vice Chair Alvarado, congratulations. Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to come and provide an update on the California Transportation Plan 2050. Next slide. As Laura mentioned, I wanted to talk about a couple of key things. First, you know, we got a lot of great public comments. I wanted to provide just a quick briefing on that. I'm talking about some of the key changes, including the ones that we've addressed specifically coming from the Commission, as well as the next steps in really getting into this implementation. Next slide. And one more. All right, so we've spent more than 2.5 years developing the plan. Beginning in 2018, Caltrans staff engaged stakeholders across the state to identify key transportation topics that would be used for the discussion within the CTP. And then in 2019 and 20, staff regularly convened subject matter experts to solicit input on statewide transportation issues in which will guide CTP policies and the plan development. I want to thank the members of the Policy Advisory Committee, the Technical Advisory Committee, as well as our Economic Technical Advisory team. They really provided a lot of good information and guidance to us in order to aid the development of the plan. One piece of good news that I do have to offer, we did get the final approval to release the CTP 2050. So that was given yesterday. So we're quickly moving to do the ADA remediation of the plan, and that should be released shortly. Next slide. Just talking a little bit about the public comments. Most of the comments that we got were really positive and really more focused on fine-tuning the plan as opposed to providing significant edits. We received comments through email, and each comment was saved, logged, tracked, and responded to accordingly. Some of the comments that we got, well, really all of them seem to align around 3 key themes: equity, climate, and public health. We had comments that looked at resiliency, climate resiliency. We had comments focusing on traffic congestion towards VMT, making that shift, emphasizing public health benefits through active transportation, as well as state, local, and regional land use authority, and elaborating on that. We also got additional comments related to Executive Orders N7920, which focuses on accelerating the sale of of zero emission vehicles, as well as further elaborating on N1919, so aligning our funding with climate change goals. And some of the other comments that were provided focused it on the California Transportation Plan and its relation to the regional transportation plans. Next slide. Now, some of the key changes that we made in the plan really were focused in on a couple of key areas. And first of all, I think it's important to note that we really appreciate the comments that we got from the commission. They provided a lot of value in terms of the changes that we've made. And I think at the end of the day, really helped improve the document. So I just want to say appreciation for that. So some of the comments that the commission had provided centered around our planning modeling assumptions that we use for 2050. So clarifying that. Also modifying planning assumptions, taking into account COVID-19 and Executive Order N7920. Roadway pricing as relates to equity and CTP implementation. So I'm going to touch on those topics there. One of the things that we released was a fact sheet that documented the modeling assumptions and the plans. And so we provided that to stakeholders to help guide the comments that they're providing to the plan. We also included a discussion related to N7920. At the time that the executive order was released, we had completed all of our modeling. And so we included a discussion in there that really provides an explanation in terms of how the plan or how the executive order is really going to help us get to our goals faster. But we weren't able to do a full technical analysis in terms of adjusting our modeling. So one of the follow-up actions that we have in the plan is to work closely with CARB to make sure that the modeling for our next plan fully incorporates N7920. And that's going to be fully integrated into the next California Transportation Plan. But we do have a robust discussion that provides some valuable information in terms of how N7920 can help accelerate our goals towards our climate change. We also elaborated on some of our pricing policies. And so one of the key things that we wanted to make sure that we're differentiating is the difference between road user charge and some of the policies surrounding more behavioral changes in managed lanes. And so we really wanted to make sure that we're clarifying that. We also talked about our telework strategy. Obviously, with this pandemic, we're all working from home. And one of the things that happened after the pandemic was, we had very limited data in terms of working from home. And so one of the initial assumptions that we had made was by 2050, 50% of the population will be working from home. But we had some data suggesting that at its peak, about 34% of people were working from home. So we went ahead and adjust that number and our post-modeling down to 25% by 2050. We also really boosted and strengthened our equity recommendation. And so we added 2 recommendations related to equity. One was expanding requirements for funding programs to provide meaningful benefits to low-income and disadvantaged communities. I'm also establishing policies to protect marginalized and disadvantaged communities from displacement and community fragmentation that may result from transportation investments. So these were 2 elements that we added to our equity recommendation. And then lastly, we wanted to make sure that we're differentiating between the CTP and RTPs. As you know, the California Transportation Plan is an financially unconstrained document, and that's dictated by statute. but we also wanted to make sure that we are providing more clarification in regards to the role that the plan has in terms of setting a vision and setting policy, and how that can potentially translate down to the financially constrained regional transportation plans. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the next steps. Next slide. And this really gets to the implementation. So we will be providing an implementation plan or implementation element that will be providing a framework and guidance for the implementation of CTP and how that relates to state, regional, and local transportation policies. We're going to be talking about roles and responsibilities of Caltrans and other agencies, as well as having the implementation framework for implementing the recommendations and actions. One of the important things that I really want to note, and I think it's really important that we all understand that this isn't Caltrans' plan. This is the state transportation plan. And and while Caltrans has a clear leadership role in implementation of the plan, it's quite clear that we're going to have to work with our partners at all levels in the government to implement the principles and the goals in the California Transportation Plan. And so we're really going to be relying on sort of a partnership approach to really move this plan forward, working with our state partners, whether it's the office of the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, working with CalSTA, working with the Air Resources Board, other state agencies to implement the plan. But it's also critical that we get the regional transportation planning agencies and the MPOs involved in the plan implementation as well. And that's the only way that we're really going to be successful in this endeavor. Next slide. So in terms of the timeline, so I already touched, we got approval for the plan, so we're going to be releasing that shortly. But in the coming months, especially in the spring, we're going to be finalizing our implementation element. We're going to be working with the policy advisory committee as well as the subject matter experts in terms of the implementation. And then in the summer, we're going to be convening additional meetings with the hope of developing performance measures that will be associated with each of the recommendations. And we're also going to be developing an implementation report, and we hope to bring that back to the commission by the end of the year, reporting our progress. And the last thing that I'll mention is, I very much see the CTP as a document that not only calls for specific actions that are associated with each one of the recommendations, but I think there's a ton of things that we can do that aren't necessarily specifically called out in the plan, but that align with the plan. And what I mean by that is, as local agencies are developing their general plans, as the MPOs and regional transportation agencies are developing and implementing their regional transportation plans, I think there are a lot of opportunities to try to get alignment with those planning efforts and making sure that we're taking those opportunities to just look for actions that really align with the plan. And so that's, I think, something that's worth noting. We don't necessarily want to get super prescriptive on implementation. I mean, obviously, we have specific actions that are called in the plan that we want to make sure that we're moving forward. But it's also important that we get that alignment at all levels of government, and we want to make sure that we're following through with that. So, having said that, that concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. We have commissioners that would like to ask a few questions and have you answer them. And we're going to start with Dr. Liu, Commissioner Liu.
Thank you, Chair. Marlon, thank you for that presentation. And I just want to start off by thanking you and Caltrans for being so responsive to our letter. very detailed, word for word response in the reply letter, but also, obviously incorporated into the final plan. It would have been great if we could have seen the final plan before today's meeting, but I understand it kind of got caught up in the bureaucracy. And a new fact sheet, I did take a look at it and I found it helpful too, one about the assumptions. I have one question about the model. I mean, what happened was, because I didn't have the revised plan to look at, I went back to the original one. So I have some questions. I hope you can be patient with me. One on the model and a few on the performance measures. The first one on the model, I noticed that the California State Freight Forecasting and Travel Demand Model cannot directly assess the impact of bicycle and pedestrian improvements on VMT reduction. I know this is in the weeds, but I was a little concerned about that. I was wondering how much of a problem that is and whether there's a way to perhaps sometime in the future revise that model so that we can directly assess those impacts from those active transportation investments.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Commissioner Liu. And one of the things that I'll mention is how we had to handle active transportation in our modeling, was done primarily in what we call sort of our post-processing. And so we want to make sure that our models have a very integrated approach to them. And I will say each time we develop our transportation plan, we get better at it. So from the time that we developed our last plan in 2040, we didn't really have a lot of land use capability in the modeling. We were able to make that improvement in this model. So what I suspect is, we're going to go back and do a lessons learned, and really think about, what opportunities can we take in the next plan to make sure that our modeling gets more sophisticated, gets more comprehensive, and ultimately be able to really have that multimodal approach. Because the post-processing is more of a workaround, and we don't necessarily want to have that approach. We want to make sure that it's comprehensive. And so, so that'll be my response. I think the next plan will really, start making strides to make it fully multimodal.
Great, thank you. That's good. That's good to hear, and I'm glad you recognize that gap and want to try to do something about it. The performance measure ones, it sort of sounded like in your presentation that there's going to be continued look at the performance measures. The ones that I saw listed, there was one on climate that was pretty vague. It wasn't real specific, but then elsewhere in the document, there is a goal of or a target of 14.7 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent. And I thought, well, why doesn't the performance measure just say that's what the target is and then measure the performance against that? Was that something you guys are going to consider?
Yeah, for sure. So as part of the implementation element in our report, we will be having specific performance measures that will be associated with each of the recommendations. And one of the things that I'll say just about the target, because I think it may have caused a bit of a confusion, so we have the 32 metric tons of million metric tons of CO2. That's attached to the 80% of 1990 levels by 2050, right? So that is the state target. The 14.7 million metric tons of CO2. That is specific to how much we need to reduce by. So that's what that target is referencing. But we'll make a note to make sure that we clarify that in our implementation phase.
I mean, it just seems that if the performance metrics are more specific, they're going to be more helpful. Two more. One on carbon capture and sequestration. I saw mention of that as a performance measure, but then couldn't find anything in the document to put it into context. And I say that because you can go down two different pathways with carbon capture and sequestration. One I like and one I don't like. And the first one that I like is the one that's consistent with the governor's executive order on working lands and healthy soils. The one I'm not so fond of is the one that just perpetuates dependency on petroleum. And that's when we use carbon to inject into oil wells and to free up more petroleum products. That one, I think, sort of undermines our ultimate goals. And I'm just wondering if you could put that carbon capture and sequestration performance measure into context for me.
Yeah, so really great question. So, you know, I think there are some items that do fall a bit out of the scope of the plan. What we wanted to try to do in the plan is to be a little bit more global and recognize the different things that are out there that can help us reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, that's primarily what we're trying to shoot for in terms of our outcome. And there are many different methods to go about doing that. Now, in terms of implementation, I think we're going to be relying on our partner agencies at the state level to really help, you know, provide some information in regards to that aspect. We're by no means experts, you know, in some of those areas. And so, you know, we're really, I think, going to be forming partnerships with other agencies to provide some of that.
And a resources agency can help you with that one. But great, thank you. That's good to know. And I think the last one has to do with the equity performance measure. And I mean, I see at least 3 things that can be covered in that, and 2 of them are, but one of them isn't. The focus on the equity performance measure is on the access to transportation and the cost of transportation. And those are good, and I would support those. The one that isn't covered, though, that I think we should certainly think about, and there may be more, but the one that stands out to me is the impact of transportation projects on, you know, on equity issues. So there's a third thing, and it's not specifically included. I wish I would have caught it when we made our comments the first time. I didn't until this time around. I hope there's some flexibility to expand that, you know, equity performance measure to take in some other things.
Yeah, sure. And I'm glad you're mentioning this. And, you know, one of the things that I talked to my staff about is really making sure that we're working closely with our Caltrans Office of Race and Equity. You know, so we're really going to get them involved. And, you know, we need to make sure that we are having reliable and effective performance measures to really move us towards our equity recommendations and our goals there. But from a planning and project development perspective, I completely agree. I think there's more that the department can do in regards to, you know, fully understanding some of the equity impacts of our work. And so we're going to make sure that we take a look at that in our implementation piece.
Great, thank you. And as Vice Chair Alvarado pointed out yesterday, there's also the jobs aspect of the equity thing that you might want to consider too. He had pointed that out yesterday. Anyway, thank you so much for the reply to my comments and for the flexibility. And I understand that this is an ongoing process. And congratulations on getting the approval to issue this in its final form.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We also have some comments from Commissioner Davis.
Marlon, good morning. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you. How are you?
Doing well. And once again, great work on the document. Certainly appreciate all the effort and time and that everybody put in. One of the public comments in the bullet points was reframing the discussion on traffic congestion towards vehicle miles traveled. And I think it's important that we, you know, work on these goals that have been set out and where the governor's working towards in the plan. And I also thought that, as Commissioner Liu pointed out, that your equity recommendations were very well done. My question or concern is that as we move towards vehicle mile travel, no matter how good our integrated modal transportation systems are, there is a segment, and I believe a large segment of the workforce that does not going to have the capacity to get on a train or bus based on whether it's their job and what they do or where they're at or whatever the case may be. And in many cases, Northern California, you've got folks driving from the Central Valley to the Bay Area, and that's what their life is going to be. Southern California, you got people driving from Moreno Valley, San Bernardino into LA every day, and those are a lot of vehicle miles traveled. And so I just would hope that Caltrans would use its sort of resources and power to really look at some real life examples of what happens to worker X, who is a factory worker, and lives in San Bernardino, and he's driving to the other side of LA to go to work every day, because our homelessness workshop I thought was great yesterday. I think that the work that we're all doing collectively is really important in moving the state forward. But I want to make sure that at the end of the day, when we have answers on vehicle mile travel and how it's going to impact lower income, middle income workers who don't have a choice but to drive their vehicles, and that as we're working towards properly taking care of transportation equity, that we're not further impacting people of color or communities who have been previously disenfranchised, and driving lower income workers who are barely getting by, maybe into homelessness based on the fact that they can no longer afford to get to their job, and they don't have an alternative. And that's not as much of a question as a statement, but maybe you guys are working on this already, or you have some thoughts. And I think it's critical as we move forward that we don't fix one problem and create another problem, or add on to a problem that's already pretty much almost unable to manage at this point with the homelessness issue.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. So a lot of our VMT strategy, reducing strategies, are related to pricing, and I think you alluded to this. And we do recognize that there are going to be folks that sort of fall outside of that. Like what we're trying to do is to get people out of their single occupancy vehicles as much as we can. And we're looking at pricing strategies to help do that. We understand that there are going to be some equity impacts, and we are trying to account for that. One of the things that we're really promoting is prioritizing fair and equitable payment as an by implementing a means-based fee structure, exemptions, tax deductions, and other ways to mitigate for low-income and middle-income Californians that don't have any other feasible way outside of driving. And so we are thinking about how to integrate that equity piece, as far as what you're referencing. And there's also a rural component to this as well. And we're also looking at ways to, how to address it from a rural and tribal perspective. I think there's a lot more work to do, in this regard. And we have to sort of recognize that, some of these strategies are going to be extremely successful, but we're going to have to sort of plan for the edge cases, and making sure that we're accommodating folks that may not have a choice. But your comment is well noted, and we'll make sure that we continue to have that discussion as we're implementing the plan.
Well, I appreciate your answer, and as I said, maybe some real world studies. Find somebody who's going to be impacted in these various categories, and let's see what it actually really looks like before we put something down in concrete that creates, as I said, another problem. But I appreciate your time and your answer, and the work on the report very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, Chair, we do not have any public comment at this time.
Thank you. I had one question, and that is that you talk about this being an unconstrained plan. And while we have a partnership with the Biden administration, how do you see us taking some of the bigger concepts and the opportunities that we will probably need for bigger partnerships in terms of funding and making that clear to our federal partners so that we can have this symbiotic relationship to get all of these things accomplished that are in the plan?
Yeah, sure. Great question. And we've already seen really strong signals, and Vince Mamano had, I think, touched on it yesterday, that equity and climate change, are going to be a priority for the administration, and we think that it's going to be a really good discussion that we can have with our partners at FHWA at looking at regulations specifically. And try to figure out ways where we can leverage different opportunities to help support some of the work that we're doing. And so, I would say sort of low-hanging fruit is to continue having those discussions with our FHWA partners, just really finding how where we're aligned and making sure that the policies that the administration is pushing, we're trying to find a way to benefit here in California, whether it's funding or different regulation updates. And obviously I think we're all talking to the administration in Washington to try to look for those early opportunities. But I am actually really, really excited about that. So.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Burke also had a comment she'd like to make.
Just a very short comment, and that is, as we look at vehicle miles traveled, you've probably been contacted by some of the people that have contacted me in terms of shared travel and whether or not they would be subject to vehicle miles traveled issues. So I just want to make sure that they're part of the conversation, because we do encourage people to go into shared travel, and we don't want to discourage that as one of the alternatives in terms of alternatives as far as vehicle miles traveled.
Yeah, sure. One of the things I would mention is, I think we need to look at metrics that do focus more on people movement, and looking at throughput for people, right? So, along different corridors, making sure that we're leveraging more transit. It can be that shared mobility that you're referencing. But really the goal is trying to get away from having single occupancy and kind of shifting more towards multiple people using a single vehicle, whether it's an Uber or a Lyft, or whether it's a bus, whether it's a train. But that's what we're trying to ultimately making that shift.
I'm glad to see you're looking at all of those alternatives. That's excellent. Great report.
Yes, thank you. We do have a public comment now.
Yes, thank you, Chair Norton. We have a written comment submitted by Stephanie White. The plan needs to provide accountability mechanisms on stated goals and promises made to residential communities during construction and maintenance, especially since many of these are in lower income communities. This relates to a wide number of issues, from design through to operation, including air and noise pollution, healthy landscaping, visual design, removal of blight, impacts to public transit, and many more. As Commissioner Burke was a county supervisor representing these neighborhoods during one of the freeway widening projects, I believe she would have these promises were not upheld, and residents were left with a mess that no one would address. The built-in accountability is not only necessary, it is long overdue. Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind, I would like to just provide a brief response to that.
Please.
And you've heard Director Omishakin, talk about the need to strengthen engagement. And so one of the things that I'm working with my counterparts in other divisions here at Caltrans is how to do that. From a planning perspective, we are, ensuring that as we're developing our corridor plans, as we're developing our active transportation plans and those sorts of things, we are really having a concerted effort at engaging, communities that are being impacted by these projects and these efforts. And what we want to make sure is that that's carrying over through project development. And so as we're developing, for instance, our project initiation documents, we want to make sure that we are engaging those same communities and those same stakeholders as we did in our planning process. And then as we're developing the projects, whether it's the environmental process or design or construction, that we're maintaining that same level of engagement throughout the project development process. And at the end of the day, I think our goal is to really establish a level of trust with the communities. We understand that there have been a number of choices in the past that have really hurt communities across the state. And it is our desire to want to make sure that we're not doing that again. And so we really want to make sure that we are, making those efforts to really engage the different folks impacted by these efforts, and really to make sure that we're having that feedback loop, getting the concerns that they have, and actually going back to them and saying, hey, this is how we incorporated your comments into the project. And so I think you're going to hear more in that regard in the future.
Thank you so much. We have an additional public comment.
Yes, thank you, Chair Norton. We do have a quick response from Stephanie White, who submitted the written comment. Would you like me to read that off first before proceeding?
Sure.
Stephanie White responds, the problem is that the promises made during that engagement does not pan out through the construction process. Thank you.
Okay. Next public comment.
So as we have a hand raised from Kiana Valentine. Kiana, you are now self-muted. Free to unmute yourself and speak.
Kiana, are you joining us?
Kiana, you're currently unmuted. If you are speaking, we cannot hear you. Okay, she may be having technical difficulties at the moment.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say, Marlon, that you're already living out the willingness for Caltrans to be a collaborator as part of this report. We really appreciate the way you had this collaborative approach to CTC staff led by Laura Pennebaker. This, I think, speaks well of the collaborative approach. We're going to get to the finish line as well, and the implementation, and we're very excited to see that. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to thank my team, the Caltrans staff that's contributed towards this, as well as our consultant team. They did a wonderful job, and we really appreciate the support of you and the commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have Kiana with us? I guess not.
We have not yet resolved.
Kiana is having technical difficulties, so we can follow up with her. Perhaps she can submit her testimony in writing. We'll let you know.
Okay, super. Thank you. Commissioner Martinez, are you on screen to speak?
Yes, Chairwoman Norton. My apologies. I've been trying to text. I'm having issues with my cell phone. But with that being said, I've worked with Marlon in the past, and I just want to just thank him for his presentation and how thorough it was. That I didn't have any questions. And as we move towards community building and community engagement, I just think it's vital for us to understand that it's not us versus them. That it truly is, as we engage in this process, that we ensure that we provide different modes of transportation, and we do it in a fashion that represents the communities that we're trying to engage in. And I think that's some of the successes that we've had, in particular in Orange County, and when I was a council member in Santa Ana, as it pertains to active transportation. There was a time in Orange County and in Santa Ana, active transportation wasn't at the top of the list. And as we engaged with the community and did community building, it became very important for us to include all our partners, and that's exactly what Marlon is trying to do as we move forward. And so I just wanted to thank him for his presentation.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And we appreciate your time and we look forward to our continued work together. And now we're going to move on to item 26, the State Highway System Management Plan overview. Tim?
Thank you. Commissioners, item 26 is an informational item. California Streets and Highway Code requires Caltrans to publish a 10-year state highway system management plan as part of an overall asset management implementation. In an odd number of years, a draft of the plan is required to be submitted to the Commission by February 15th for comment, and is required to be submitted to the governor and legislative members by June 1st. Michael Johnson, the state asset manager for Caltrans, will be presenting an overview of the state highway system management plan, as well as sharing information on electronic state highway operations and protection plan 10-year book. I'll give it to Mike first.
Good morning, Chair Norton and commissioners.
Good morning.
Today I will be presenting two topics, as Tim mentioned, both under the umbrella of asset management, but yet very different. The first topic will be a briefing of the 2021 State Highway System Management Plan. This plan is central to our asset management efforts and is the seed of which most, if not all, SHOP projects are born that come before the Commission. The second topic, I'll be showing a short demonstration of a new public-facing SHOP project dashboard that we call the Virtual Project Book. The Virtual Project Book will help improve the transparency engagement on all SHOP projects for all citizens of California. Next slide. The State Highway System Management Plan is a performance-based framework that really guides the decision-making and priorities for the maintenance, operation, and rehabilitation of the state highway system. As Tim mentioned, the plan is required by state regulation to be updated every 2 years in odd years. So this is the draft 2021 plan that I'll be briefing you on today. This plan covers a number of state and federal requirements, including Streets and Highway Code requirements, Assembly Bill 515 requirements that require us to look at the balance between maintenance and rehabilitation of the state highway system, as well as MAP 21 and FAST Act requirements at the federal level. In addition, this plan aligns highway maintenance program and the SHOP with the new strategic management plan that Director Amashokin talked about yesterday. Next slide. The plan is a forward-looking plan covering a 10-year period beginning July 1, 2021 and going through June 30th, 2031. When we look at that 10-year plan period, we note that some of the projects are already programmed. The first 3 years are in the 2020 SHOP. We have 2 additional years that are currently finishing up the planning process and will be coming to the Commission next fall for the 2022 SHOP. And then we have what we call the performance gap. And this is the work that we need to start lining up to make sure that the projects that we're going to do will get us to the goals that we're trying to achieve. And then all throughout this entire 10-year plan period, we have annual maintenance work that's being performed on the state highway system as well. Next slide. The plan is a 265-page document. It has a number of aspects, but the 3 key things that I would like the Commission to understand about the plan is that we first conduct a needs assessment. This needs assessment is unconstrained by funding. However, it is constrained by the targets established by the Commission. The costs necessary to close all performance gaps are then determined, and this is what we present as a needs assessment. Again, it is unconstrained by available funding. Then we have to look with our budget folks to see what does our revenue picture look like for the coming 10 years. So as was noted yesterday, the fund estimate is only a 5-year forward-looking plan. We're looking 10 years out, even beyond the fund estimate. We take that financial projection and we have to constrain the overall needs to develop a fully constrained investment plan. And the investment plan is really central to our overall asset management approach because it defines how available funding is recommended to be allocated to the 36 different objectives that we're simultaneously trying to achieve in the shop. We have to prioritize where available to fit within the resources that we have. And this ultimately means that we have to make some really tough choices about what we can fund and what we can't fund. But once we arrive at this investment plan, we then look at that constrained funding picture to estimate the performance that would be expected from that constrained investment. Next slide. So there's a lot going on in this slide. I'm not going to go through all the details in the interest of time, but know that the process that we go through is very much a bottoms-up approach. We look at the assets that we have, the current inventory that we have. We look at the current condition. We look at deterioration rates. We build in the targets that the commission has established. We look at how far we are from those targets currently, and then we estimate the cost to close those gaps. Next slide. So for the 2021 plan, our 10-year shop needs are estimated to be $116 billion. This is an increase from previous plans, largely due to the ongoing maturation of our asset management program and the completion of planning efforts and overall better data. So we have some new components of this plan that I'll be talking about, specifically the addition of the complete streets as new objectives in this plan, both from a rehabilitation of existing facilities as well as the build out of gaps that we have in the system. We've also done the first estimates of sea level rise mitigation that would be incurred in this 10-year period if our emission reduction and avoidance strategies are not realized to the degree we think. Next slide. When we apply our fiscal constraint, we see that we have funding that's on the order of $46 billion for the shop. So we're comparing $116 billion worth of needs to $46 billion available. The nice thing about doing our asset management this way is if new funding were to become available through stimulus or other means, we know exactly where it would go. And we know in a priority order where it would go. But our investment that we're proposing continues our commitment to fix it first with almost $27 billion of investments in our 4 core assets. That's pavement, bridges, culverts, and transportation management system elements. And this plan has a fairly significant investment in bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure to help us achieve a number of the goals that are in our strategic management plan, including climate action, equity, and modality. And so we are proposing a $1.6 billion investment over the next 10 years in new and/or rehabilitation of existing bicycle and ped facilities in California. Next slide. This is just an excerpt of the plan, mainly just showing that we are aligning shop and maintenance investments side by side, and we're looking at the combined effect of these two things. So this is a dramatic improvement from where we were just a short number of years ago, where these were done more independent than they are now. These are joined at the hip, and the better we do at maintenance, the more costs we can avoid in the shop. As we replace assets in the shop, we reduce maintenance. So that's somewhat of a circular relationship here, but we try to present this information in very clear terms We have columns like the pipeline, which are what, in effect, we've already committed, the 3 years that the commission has already programmed, plus the 2 years that will be coming to you in the 2022 shop, and then what our gap is. And so you can see how much we've invested in the first 5 years relative to the last 5 years. It's an indication of which of our assets are gaining investment, which ones may be losing investment. And we try to present this in a very transparent means. Next slide. Just quick on the schedule for the State Highway System Management Plan. The Streets and Highway Code require the plan to be submitted to the Commission by February 15th of this year, so in a couple weeks. We are just finishing up all of the internal comments within Caltrans, and the plan was distributed to all MPOs and RTPAs yesterday for their public comment through the month of February. Once the Commission receives the plan in mid-February, the Commission will have typically to the March meeting, which is a little bit over a month, to prepare comments to the plan. We will come back in March, hear the comments from the Commission and Commission staff, and then between the March meeting and May, we will work to resolve those comments with the Commission staff. And then, as Tim mentioned, ultimately, June 1st, the plan is required by law to be transmitted to the governor and legislature. And next slide. With that, I mentioned I had 2 topics. I still have the demo that I want to do, but I want to pause here to see if there are questions on the State Highway System Management Plan before we get into the virtual project book.
Okay, seeing that there are no public comments currently, I wanted to ask commissioners if you had comments. Fran, Commissioner Inman, I see your video. I'll make comment on you, and then Commissioner Liu, you're next.
Thank you, Chair Norton, and thank you, Michael. Just a question really follows up from yesterday's presentation about safety. And I asked this of Rachel yesterday, but same question. So where does our safety filter come in terms of what you've described to us?
Thanks for that question. Rachel and I have been collaborating to look at a significant reimagining of how safety funding is done within the shop. And, you know, when we first implemented the State Highway System Management Plan, we moved to a performance-based framework. But our safety programs, we're working to different performance metrics, and we're trying to align them and, in fact, consolidate our safety programs around a central performance metric, which is reducing fatalities and serious injuries. And we are very optimistic that by focusing more on measured outcomes in terms of accident reduction, that we will actually be able to get better outcomes with the funding that we have available for safety.
But it's more than just safety funding. I think my question more is, where does the safety question come in to the analysis that you do? So I understand that there's set aside for what we call safety, but for all of us transportation sector participants, safety is always first and foremost in what we're thinking about. So I guess my question is, how do those safety questions, and I appreciate that we're looking at fatalities in particular, because we can have a lot of different accidents, whether it's active transportation or whatever, but how do we get the safety, or is the safety one of your criteria and you're just going to merge those two, but it's more than just that safety funding?
The safety is actually 4 of the 36 shop objectives that I discussed. So we, generally speaking, have reactive safety programs and proactive safety programs. So we, we do many ongoing traffic accident investigations, and there are findings that come out of those that we fund in the shop through a reservation that the Commission grants us in the shop. And then we also have proactive programs to try to avoid crashes in the first place. And so those objectives are in the plan already. What Rachel and I have been working on is really more about stretching the dollars to get better outcomes in those arenas.
Okay, because we heard the heartbreak of a father who took the time to call in yesterday, who lost his son recently. So I think it just brought it home to all of us on that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Inman. Commissioner Liu.
Great, thank you. That's a great question from Commissioner Inman. I'll have to warn you that I sometimes get a little obsessed about these things when I look at the item and I'm like, okay, well, where's the plan? The plan's not ready. Okay, well, what about the last plan? What's that based on? And then, you know, oh, that was required by a section of the health and the streets and highway code. So let me go take a look at that. And I go down this rabbit hole, and, you know, thanks to the internet, you know, there I am. So I ended up discovering that in the health and safety code, it says the plan shall identify any existing backlog in those maintenance activities and shall recommend a strategy, specific activities, and associated funding level to reduce or prevent any backlog during the planned 5-year period. So I go to the 2019 plan, I search for the word backlog, and it doesn't show up. And I'm wondering, well, I wonder if this new one has that, you know, legislatively required list of backlog items. And so I'm asking you about that. And I'm sorry to take you with my trip down that rabbit hole, but since I noticed it wasn't in the 2019 plan, I was wondering if it's going to be in this one.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Commissioner Liu. And before you go down the rabbit hole next, I'd be happy to set up a briefing and walk through it with you if you prefer.
No, I just did this like yesterday, day before yesterday, so it was a little late in the process.
Yeah, originally there was a requirement for a 5-year maintenance plan, and then there was a completely independent requirement for a 10-year shop plan. The problem is that these things are really joined at the hip. And so, you know, as I mentioned, if we do better maintenance, then it has a positive impact on shop needs, and vice versa. If we're spending a lot in the shop, we get new assets that require less maintenance. So part of our effort is to come up with the unconstrained need, right? That's the unmet need portion. In this plan, that unmet need is something on the order of $6.9 billion annually. That is the unmet need. So it's there that we establish what's not happening out there, right? That's the sort of awareness part that the legislature was interested in when they set the laws up. And so that's the approach. In terms of the maintenance component specifically, we generally, you know, the maintenance program has the funds that the maintenance program has. And so from a plan perspective, we're looking at what those funds can accomplish, and then the balance is just unmet need.
Okay. I'll have to take a look at it to make sure I understand it correctly, but that's good to know, because you know, here I am looking for this keyword of backlog and didn't find it, and I was wondering where it was going. And that unmet need, I mean, obviously, I mean, based off the federal update yesterday from Vince, you know, having identified that $116 billion in need over the 10 years is absolutely critical, right? So that we're in a good place to take advantage. If the federal government is going to be generous, we can be receptive and tell them exactly where that money's going to go based off this plan. So this is, you know, really helpful, I think. Also a little frightening that, you know, we have 40% of what we need in terms of if things were ideal and we had unconstrained spending. So I know we're not done trying to figure it out, and I'm glad that you're trying to make every dollar stretch as far as it can, because when you have 60% of your need not being funded, it certainly is pretty important to be efficient. So
thank you. I'd like to call on Vice Chair Alvarado, and then I have some questions before we move on to the next part of your presentation. You're on mute, Bob.
And I think your last point, Commissioner, is the heart of the problem. Right before you came on board, this commission took a vote to defund like $750 million worth of projects. prior to and part of the conversation of all the way back actually to 1B, let alone SB 1, when we were about $20 billion short of our needs. So it's all about cash flow. You know, when we have a little bit of money, we make great strides in both repair and expansion. And then we go into these troughs where we have nothing and we defund projects. And at least now we defund the project and don't make them go back and redo the environmental. We kind of defund it with prejudice, if you will. But prior to that, those actions being taken, we used to pull projects off the shelf and then they had to start over again. So when you look at what Michael and the rest of the staff is trying to do and balance all that, it is spend the money as wisely as you can and take care of the most needing issues, and then go back and try and get more money and catch up. I doubt that we'll ever get to the point where Michael's going to come before us and go, you know what, we're all caught up, and now we can do all these wonderful things that we really would like to do. So, you know, it's a cash flow problem. I mean, you know, when we get into this, we got what is it now, 10 years of SB1 money coming down the road. You're going to enjoy your time on the commission actually spending money. The commission before I came on, there were 2 commissioners that spent their whole term and never funded a project. That's how bad it got before 1B. So thank you, Michael, for all your work. I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you, and thank you for your long-term support. We've come a long way since we first started this together.
Yeah, that's extraordinary information, Vice Chair Alvarado. Thank you. I had 2 questions. One was about technology, and you are looking at, you know, road repair technology and fix it first, and even drainage technology. How do you account for better processes as you're creating these plans, especially the ones that could actually help save us money, and then other funding sources that could help fill in some of those gaps as people are starting to look at drainage and pavement together in new ways?
Great questions. So let me address the funding piece and the efficiency piece first, and I'll weave in some technology. So I'll use drainage as an example. You know, when we first started our asset management efforts about 5 years ago, I think we had about 20 or 30% of the culverts in the state inventoried. So if we don't know what we have and what kind of condition it's in, it's very difficult to have any kind of effective plan. We are now, you know, up into significant percentages of that inventory completed, and the balance will be done in the next 2 years. But to get that, there's a lot of technology that has to be used. For example, a lot of these culverts require these little robot video cameras that climb through these culverts because they're too small for a person, for example. In bridges, we're using drones to help us in our bridge inspection. Underwater, we're using sonar technology. We're using LiDAR technology to capture assets on the highway system to get better inventories. So there's lots of different innovative technologies that we're using as a department. And one of the key things that we've done, starting with the 2018 shop really, was allowing different assets to be combined together into a single project. And this is really critical because we had very silo-based funding prior to that, and it led to a kind of a behavior where we're going to do the bridge and nothing beyond the end of the bridge, or we're going to do the culvert and not think about the pavement. We've completely turned that on its head in the 2018 shop, and going forward, where now we're looking at when does the pavement need to be rehabbed? What are the pipe culverts that are underneath that pavement look like? Should we be doing them together? Are we going to put new pavement down and then have to come back and tear it up to do the culvert? So there's much, much more inter-asset or cross-asset integration, or what we call multi-objective projects being put forward in the shop. So this saves us a tremendous amount of money, both in economies of scale in our contracting, as well as reduced support costs in having to do multiple planning documents, environmental documents, right-of-way documents. We do this one time, we go into a quarter and we knock out a whole bunch of things at once. So just a couple snippets of things we've been doing in that arena.
Thank you. And actually, that's a great segue to my next question. And that was about your statement about the bike and ped 1.6 billion and how that interacts with our ATP program that is 5 times oversubscribed. Is this a way of working bike and ped into the projects you have for SHOP beyond complete streets and beyond active transportation, or how do they work together?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say under Director Almashakin's leadership, we've really bolstered our investment in this arena, and particularly the expansion of the existing system. And, these are many of the same types of projects that the ATP program is looking at. But historically, when we've done complete streets work, and we have been doing it in the shop, we do it when it's in line with projects that we're otherwise doing. And I think the big change here is that we're devoting money to bike and ped infrastructure that doesn't necessarily have to have a corresponding highway system attribute to it. That doesn't mean we still cannot spend SHOP money off the state highway system, but we can target specific high value gap closure complete streets projects that may not have a pavement rehab need adjacent to them at the current time. So we're kind of getting a little bit more independent there in terms of finding good, high quality complete streets enhancements.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we just asked in the previous item is, how do we then take that into account as you're looking at reducing VMT over the system? Because if you're going to be adding these great bike ped opportunities that are going to reduce car travel, how do we then keep that as a way of saying that over the system, we're going to reduce overall VMT?
Yeah, it's also a great question, and it really gets at, we know exactly how many cars, or pretty much how many cars are traveling down our freeway, but we don't have very good count measures for a lot of our non-freeway assets. And that's one of the areas that we're looking to expand when we do some of these projects, is in the arena of detection. So we know, okay, how heavily used is this new bike facility that we built, or how many pedestrians are walking, along this particular route. And if we can get them off the highway and onto sidewalks, maybe we can also knock down our injury and fatality numbers as well. So we're kind of looking at this holistically, realizing that the size of the overall pie is limited, but it's really about, how do we right size the slices of each one of these 36 different pieces we're trying to carve out.
This is fascinating, and we're really excited about you letting us nerd out a little bit on all the details, because you have so many people in the construction and industry and freight and the clean air. So we really appreciate you giving us some of these details, because they're so fascinating for all of us.
Well, we're happy to do it, and I have a really great team. We've got a lot of support. We have asset managers in all 12 of our districts. We've got very good program managers in our headquarters office, and this product is really a team effort. This isn't me. This is all of Caltrans producing this document.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. And now I'm going to just transition maybe to the next slide real quick. I'm really excited about this, and I think as a department we're excited. We are pleased to announce the availability of a public-facing dashboard for SHOP projects. This is a website that is live as we speak, and I'm not going to give the website out until the end of the little demo so we don't crash the system. But it is publicly available. Anybody in the world can come in and look at where Caltrans is planning to work in the shop for the next 10 years. The project book allows projects to be searched by numerous criteria, including map location and performance level detail that is not even that is not in the shop. It's more, we have more detail available to look at specific project aspects than has ever been published before by Caltrans.
Wow.
The project book is intended to improve the transparency of where we're investing our money, what projects we're doing, and to provide greater opportunity for the public to engage in our shop projects. The dashboard supports mapping, data queries, and all resulting information can be downloaded to local machine in Excel if someone wants to sort and filter and do whatever they want to do with the data. So we are as open and transparent as we could possibly be with the shop. And with that, there's a pre-recorded about a 3-minute video that kind of walks through what this dashboard is capable of. The virtual project book includes 5 key sections. At the top of the dashboard, we have 2 rows of criteria that can be used to query specific projects from a database of over 2,100 projects. There are a couple that I want to go into. One is the project activities. This includes a very, very detailed breakdown of over 100 different activities that may be present on a project. These activities can be searched individually or in combination. Additionally, the dashboard supports searching by keyword, and we could just enter in any criteria in the keyword search and hit enter to find all projects that pertain to that keyword. The map on the left is showing a global map of California that can be zoomed in as needed, but it's showing the results of your project query. And in this case, it's showing all 2,173 projects. In the middle, we have details about a particular project, and as we highlight one project in the left map, the details in the center will change. The map on the far right is a project scale map, so it's detailed for one specific project. At the bottom is a listing of all the projects that result from the query criteria that was established at the top. Okay, I want to walk through one quick example. In this case, I'm going to use the keyword search field, and I want to find every project that involves something pertaining to a bike. So I'm going to put the word bike in the keyword search, hit enter, and when I do that, the map in the lower left will return all of the projects that have something to do with a bike. I'm going to go select a particular project up here in the northern part of California. And when I select that project, the details for that project will appear in the center window. In this case, the project is on Highway 101 in Del Norte County. The description is to replace a bridge over the Smith River. And you can see that in the far right is a project detail map. So it's much closer. So the one on the left shows you where you are in the state. The one on the right shows the project vicinity. We can jump out to Google Maps from here, and we will get a map image in Google. We can then shift to satellite image if we choose to do that. And then we can see the surrounding areas with its imagery. We can also switch to street view if we want to get a close look at the highway itself. And once in here, just like any other street view, we're now in Google at this particular bridge, so we could see what this bridge looks like. In addition, some of the projects have links to more detailed project pages. There's a link here. It says go to project details. We click on this page, and we are taken to a project web page that is hosted by our District 1 up in the northern part of California. At the bottom of this page is a listing of projects. In this case, I've selected just one project, so the listing has one. If I remove the selection and get back to all of the results that include bikes, the listing will grow to many more projects, and we have the capability to download this listing to your local machine for use. This has been a quick tour of the virtual project book dashboard. Our hope is that this dashboard improves the transparency of the shop allowing for more stakeholder engagement and improved projects to further our asset management goals. That was quick. Sorry about that, but the link flashed up very quick, but we have an easy to remember website. It's projectbook.dot.ca.gov. It's accessible live now from the Caltrans homepage in the Working with Caltrans project portal, or just going directly to projectbook.dot.ca.gov. We would like to have the commission and the public at large and all of our stakeholders use the dashboard. We're very interested in feedback and particularly any opportunities that that are identified to improve the dashboard. So we see this as a first. There was a lot of infrastructure behind the scenes necessary to make this work, and I want to thank the Caltrans IT group for their efforts in pulling this all together and getting these public-facing servers up and running quickly. And I certainly would be remiss without mentioning my team in asset management, specifically Melissa Thompson, Lauren Turner, and the creator of this dashboard, Mara Chowdhury. Fabulous work from my staff, and I think the people of California will appreciate their work.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time, and thank you to you and your team for working with the CTC. We have a question from Commissioner Inman. You're on mute, Fran. Still muted.
Mute myself. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. Anyway, that was fantastic, Michael. Love that. Just random curiosity. Do we have the accident data on that kind of a visual?
We do not, not in this particular dashboard. That is something that we're discussing with our attorneys about the ability to put that information out. And I know Rachel's been doing a lot of work with UC Berkeley in this arena as well. So I think that's still a work in progress, but something we are actively working on.
Okay, we want to respect everybody's privacy, but I think that would be really a helpful tool for everybody too. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and just one add on to the safety, from an asset management perspective, I'm working to try to get the ability to see the different inventory and condition pieces as well as operational deficiencies, safety, congestion, overlaid with all of our projects, right? And that's where we starting to see the benefit. Are we working in the right places? Are our projects addressing the things we need to address from a visual standpoint? And I think just making that data available will help improve our program.
I agree. So thank you very, very much.
Okay, Commissioner Liu, I see you back up. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, yes, I do. It really is pretty cool. Thank you for sharing that. And with regard to Commissioner Inman's question, I did find this wonderful accident database out of UC Berkeley. I forget what it's called exactly. I was looking for the bookmark in my browser, but I can't find it. And it is really great detail there. And so if there's a way to incorporate that, that would be wonderful too. And my question actually was similar in that, Cal EPA has the Cal Enviro screen data in a map form, and it might be really helpful to overlay that data somehow into the map function of this virtual book.
Yeah, great suggestion. We've done that internal to the department in GIS to look at the equity of our shop investments in prior shop documents. And like I said, this is our initial foray into putting information out there. There was a lot of infrastructure needed to make this possible. But now that the infrastructure is in place, I would expect that this would be the seed from which other things will grow.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Well, we really appreciate this item. We appreciate your team, and I know our staff appreciates how much we've been able to connect on this and be forward-looking so that we can fill in some of those gaps from the 46 to 116 that we still need to find the funds for. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I want to call on Tim to walk us through both the information calendar and the consent calendar today. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Chair Norton. Commissioners, items 27 through 38 are on the information items deemed acceptable and of no issues raised by staff. Therefore, individual items will not be presented unless specifically requested by a commissioner.
Okay. Commissioners, are there any requests to pull any of the information items out from 27 to 38? Okay, if none, please go to the consent items. Tim?
Yep, I just wanted to also just make a quick note that there was a correction on item 30 that was documented on the change list for the information calendar.
Thank you.
I can second if Commissioner Burke is ready to move it.
I'll move it.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have a motion by Commissioner Burke and a second by Commissioner
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
think there were some changes to the consent calendar.
We're not on
Oh, we're not-
consent, we're on information.
We don't need a motion for the info calendar.
Okay, that's right. So the motion we will need, Commissioner Kehoe and Commissioner Burke, will be for the consent calendar, and we have not gone through those yet. We are going to take up 39 to 55 in consent items. We are pulling out item 46. So Tim, do you want to, is there anything we need to know from 39 to 55, or can we move these items? We'll go back to 46 separately.
I think we can go, yeah, we're going to go through items 39 through 45 and 47 through 55 on the consent calendar for a vote of approval. Note that there are changes to item 45 on the change list. 7 resolutions of necessity were withdrawn prior to the CTC meeting. And with these changes, Commission staff recommends approval for items 39 through 45 and 47 through 55 on the consent calendar.
Okay, now's the time for the motion.
Move.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, Douglas, can you please read the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Alvarado,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Burke,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Eager,
Aye.
Commissioner Guardino, Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe,
Aye.
Commissioner Liu,
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez,
Aye.
Commissioner Tavoloni,
Aye.
Chair Norton.
Aye.
Chair, the motion is
before we-
approved.
Thank you. And before we get to item 46, I just want to make sure we recognize that we had the 8 ayes required for the 20 resolutions of necessity in item 45.
Yes, Madam Chair, we did.
Okay, thank you. Could you present item 46 for us, Gurtej?
Yes, thank you, Chair Norton. Item 46 is for director's deeds for the sale of excess lands in the amount of $2,241,250. As noted in the change list, one parcel was withdrawn prior to this meeting. This parcel is located in Fresno County near State Route 180 and has an appraised value of $1.3 million. With this change noted on the change list, staff recommends approval of these director's deeds.
Okay, before we take up item 46, we know Commissioner Eager has some comments to make.
Yes, I just had a question about why that number 4 was pulled. I had certainly gotten some information from our local flood control and our local senator about the importance of this transfer, that it was going to be a transfer so that the flood control district could use it for storage, and that it was in exchange for maintenance fees forever, so that Caltrans doesn't have to keep paying for maintenance on a piece of property that they're not going to use, and that the flood control can actually use for storage. And I'm sure everyone understands the importance of water storage in the valley. So I was just checking to see why that one was pulled, and if there's more information needed to ensure that we put it back on the calendar when we have enough information.
Yeah, so that was the intent with withdrawing if obtain more information after the meeting and potentially have it presented again in March. And the staff's thoughts were that with the commission resolution, as far as excess land sale for the direct conveyance of sort of appraised property of 1.3 million. And so that's why I said some additional information that before the meeting, for this meeting in March.
I don't know if it was just my computer, but I only heard every other word you said.
That's the same for the rest of us. We're having some audio issues. If you could repeat your statement.
Maybe Tim could
Sorry
hop in and
for that.
do that.
I can hear me.
Maybe if he turns his video off, it'll.
So if I can, commissioners, we just had a question about the valuation and the appropriate number of years of maintenance to look at. Obviously, if we give the land away, we're not going to be doing maintenance costs forever. But what's the appropriate number of years that we should be quantifying in order to get at the value of the property? And we will be able to get to the bottom of that hopefully very quickly.
And so that will be back on for our March meeting?
I would expect so.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I've gotten a lot of questions about that one.
If it is not coming back in March, we will certainly follow up and let you know what's happening.
I appreciate it.
Wonderful, thank you. And with that, Commissioner Eager, are you amenable to us moving forward with item 46?
Yes, so long as we bring it up later.
Okay, well, thank you. We need a new motion for to move item 46.
So moved, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Kehoe, we can't hear your audio. Are you seconding?
Yes, I am. Thank you for the reminder.
Thank you so much. Douglas, could you please read the roll?
Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Eager.
Aye.
Commissioner Guardino. Commissioner Inman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Aye.
Commissioner Liu.
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez.
Aye.
Commissioner Tavaloni.
Aye.
Chair Norton.
Aye.
Chair, the item is approved.
Thank you. And that brings us to item 56.
We're going to lose Kehoe here in a few minutes.
Tim, could you present this item for us?
Yes, thanks, Chair Norton. Commissioners, this resolution of necessity hearing was requested by the property owners, Ross and Diana Patterson, due to impacts on their property caused by a $71 million shop safety project on State Route 70 in Yuba County. The purpose of the project is to reduce the frequency and severity of collisions within the project limits. The Patterson property is 4.81 acres, zoned agricultural industrial. The area required for this project is 1 acre in fee and 0.6 acres in underlying fee. The subject property is currently being used as a single-family residence with the remaining land for agricultural purposes and is located on the west side of State Route 70. The topography is flat with fencing, gates, buffer trees, various fruit trees, and other structures that appear to be storage or shops. The California Civil Code of Procedures, Section 1245.210, identifies the California Transportation Commission as the governing body in the case of a taking by the California Department of Transportation. According to the California Civil Code of Procedures, Section 1245.230, a resolution of necessity is approved by the CTC and shall contain all of the following. Part A, a general statement of the public use for which the property is to be taken and a reference to the statute that authorizes the Department of Transportation to acquire the property by eminent domain. Part B, a description of the general location and extent of the property to be taken with sufficient detail for reasonable identification. And finally, Part C, which is the nature of the hearing before you today, the resolution of necessity must include a declaration that the California Transportation Commission has found and determined the following 4 items. 1, the public interest and necessity require the project, the public interest and necessity require the proposed project. The proposed project is planned or located in the manner that will be the most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. 3, the property described in the resolution is necessary for the proposed project. And 4, that the offer required by section 7267.2 of the Government Code has been made to the owner or owners of record. It's my understanding that the Department of Transportation has provided this offer on November 27th, 2019. Code of Civil Procedures section 1245.240 specifies 8 affirmative votes for commission approval of a resolution of necessity. Carlos Portillo, Caltrans Chief, North Region Project Development, is ready to make Caltrans' presentation.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Madam Chair Norton and Commissioners. Before I go on, I would like to double check. Can you hear me okay?
Thank you. Yes, we can, Mr. Portillo.
Wonderful. I am here to talk to you about the district's request for a resolution of necessity on the parcel owned by Mr. and Mrs. Patterson. A portion of this parcel is needed for the state safety project on the State Route 70 in Yuba County. Again, my name is Carlos Portillo, and I'm the Chief of North Region Project Development for Caltrans. The need for this project is very clear. Unfortunately, we have too many traffic fatalities in this corridor. You will see at a quick glance the need in the upcoming slides. The purpose of the project is to reduce traffic fatalities and injury-type collisions, and to address operational needs that also enhance safety. This slide clearly demonstrates the need of this project. Unfortunately, the State Route 70 corridor from Oroville to Marysville has experienced too many crashes, reflecting a high number of fatalities. The project limits are highlighted in the red circle area. Within the red circle area, we count a total of 20 fatalities that resulted from 14 crashes between 2010 to 2020. We are showing fatalities with the symbol. Yet, these are people, parents, sons, daughters, grandparents, friends like us. The green cross reflects the fatality in 2020. The blue crosses reflect multiple fatalities that occurred in 2019. The orange ones occurred in 2018. Red and black crosses show accidents that occurred between 2010 and 2017. District 3 has initiated several projects along the State Route 70 corridor to address this over the last several years. In the fall of 2019, just 8 miles north of this project, we have completed a similar safety project. At the completed segment, there has been no fatal crashes, and the accident rate is now 33% below the statewide average. We are confident that the proposed safety improvements do work. This project is located on Route 70 in Yuba County, north of Marysville to the Butte County line at Honkat Creek. The project limits are highlighted in blue, and the total length of the project is 9.2 miles. This display reflects all the crashes during the same time period shown in the previous slide from 2010 to 2020. As we ask, does the public interest and necessity require the proposed project? In addition to the fatal crashes from the previous slide, we can add 265 injuries from 160 crashes and an additional 179 collisions with property damage only. As we ask, does the public interest and necessity require the proposed project? We could only reply with the sound yes.
Absolutely.
The fatal crash rate is 380% above the statewide average. All 4 recent photos were taken near the Patterson's parcel. Please note in the upper right corner, next to the slow-moving farm equipment, there is no clear recovery zone, abbreviated in the photo as CRZ. The poles and the trees are close to the roadway, not allowing adequate opportunity for a driver to regain control of an errant vehicle. As one can see, the shoulders in both sides of the roadway are narrow and the steep ditch is close. The current right-of-way does not have enough room to construct the needed shoulder width and establish a clear recovery zone. And by the way, similar constraints exist all throughout the project limits. As we ask, is the project planned and located in a manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury? Keep in mind that in the efforts to address such questions and learn public concerns, we held many meetings. We have greatly benefited from our interaction with the public. Because of this feedback, the final design reduced the impacts from 187 acres to 67 acres, a 65% reduction, from displacing 43 residents and businesses to 6, and right-of-way reduced costs from $153 million to $15.2 million, a reduction of 90% on the right-of-way cost. We have also met with the Farm Bureau, Marysville City Council, Yuba and Butte County Supervisors, local politicians, and Flood Protection Board, CHP, BCOG, SACOG, to name some of the stakeholders regarding this project. We feel confident that the department is presenting a project planned and located in a manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. The proposed safety improvements include the following. In the middle of the roadway, we propose to construct a 2-way left turn lane to provide a buffer between northbound and southbound traffic. This will also make it safer for drivers making left turns and those entering and exiting the roadway. 8-foot shoulders designed to accommodate disabled vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles. The shoulders will also allow access for emergency response vehicles in an area for CHP enforcement. These improvements also make the roadway more livable for local residents, providing room for mail and parcel delivery, school buses, refuse pickup, and other services. Establishes a clear recovery zone for a driver to regain control of an errant vehicle. Adds a slow-moving vehicle lanes in each direction, addressing driver frustration by providing a safe passing opportunity. This also reduces conflict between the commuting traffic and the slow-moving agriculture equipment. Based on the need of these safety improvements, the property is necessary for the project. The department is proposing to purchase 1 acre from this 4-acre parcel as shown in yellow. The width varies from 35 feet at the north end to 69 feet at the south end. The width varies as it follows the curb alignment, and this will leave a remainder of 3.8 acres. Is the project planned and located in a manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury? The design minimizes as much as practical right-of-way impacts to residents, businesses, and utilities throughout the project limits. This is accomplished in this section of the project by widening to the west, impacting the Patterson's parcel, and resulting in fewer overall impacts than widening to the east. This leaves both a viable business and a functional residence for the Pattersons. In trying to cause the least private injury to the Pattersons, Caltrans has tried to address the following concerns. The Pattersons did not want a culvert under the driveway by the house, so no culvert was placed at that location. They would like semi-truck access at all driveways, so they were modified to allow semi-truck access. They wanted a junction box between the northern driveway and their neighbors to the north, and a junction box was added. They also asked that the ditch in front of their house be as shallow as possible, and this was done. How has the state reduced the right-of-way impacts to the Patterson's parcel? The 10-foot minimum requirement for the catch point to the new right-of-way line was eliminated to reduce the right-of-way acquired. The existing high-pressure gas line was accommodated within the state's right-of-way to reduce right-of-way acquisition. The department determined the amount to just compensation, which included the value of the land needed for the project, the improvements within the area needed for the project, curative damages to secure the property, fences and gates, as well as ornamental and crop-producing trees, and curable severance damages, if any. In summary, the public interest and necessity require the proposed project. This project is planned and located in a manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. The properties have to be condemned if necessary for the proposed project. An offer of just compensation has been made in accordance with the Government Code 7267.2. In conclusion, the department will actively continue negotiations, but to ensure this project continues forward, we request your approval of this resolution of necessity, and now I will be happy to answer questions.
We do have some public comments, and we were wondering if there was in that public comment list, we have the owners themselves.
Yes, the owners are on at this time.
You have a representative for the owners.
Okay, we'd like to hear from the owner's representative, and then we have some questions we want to ask.
Okay, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't quite certain. I haven't used the system before. My name is Kristen Renfro. I am an attorney for Ross and Diana Patterson, assisting them with respect to the proposed acquisition of a portion of their property by Caltrans. We requested appearance today, and previously on April 10th submitted a letter of objection to when the originally scheduled resolution hearing was set, to outline for the commission our concerns and as to why we do not believe in this instance the proposed project is planned or located in the manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury, and why the requirements of the Government Code 7267.2 have not been complied with. I want to first note that in the presentation just made, I heard very little about the primary concern that the Pattersons have been speaking to representatives of Caltrans about, and which we emphasized greatly in the condemnation evaluation review process at the two meetings we did have, about the Pattersons' safety, their safety in their home, the proximity of the new proposed right-of-way line to their home, how much closer that right-of-way line is coming to their home, the movement of not only currently planned lanes of travel as part of this project and improvements including the shoulder area, paved area that's coming closer to their home. But what we know are going to be future improvements made as part of a follow-up project, and who knows in the future. Bringing the right-of-way line as close to their home as Caltrans proposes to do is something that causes the Pattersons grave concern about their safety. They are as familiar as anyone could be with the devastating accidents that have occurred on Highway 70 through this reach. They have been witness and could certainly relay stories of terrible accidents in that area. They have had cars come through their front yard. They are absolutely sensitive and appreciative of Caltrans' efforts to improve the safety of Highway 70 through that reach to the traveling public. But what's been lost in this process is the need to prioritize at the same time the safety of residents living along Highway 70 in the vicinity of the proposed improvements. Ross and Diana live in their home, they sleep in their home, watch TV in their home, spend time in their front yard sitting on their front porch. And what is proposed to be done here is move high-speed traffic and associated improvements very close to where they are living. Very large mature trees will be removed. Other things that cause some kind of buffer or provide them some measure of safety, security, sense of security are going to be removed. There has not been any proposed improvement as part of the project that's been identified to account for their safety. There's been no analysis of that. We inquired through the design review process, the condemnation evaluation process, what analysis has been made or what study was done of the safety to occupants of residences alongside the highway. And the answer was really that there hadn't been. The answer was really that because the county would allow the right-of-way to come as close as it would to the property, despite the fact that it would make the current residents a legal non-conforming use, that because the county was fine with that, it wasn't necessary to study it. The commission really has no information or data before it to give it any sense of comfort that the safety from cars coming off the roadway of the Pattersons in their home has been looked at and that they will be safe. I appreciate the emphasis that's been placed on reducing the amount of right-of-way that needs to be acquired, minimizing the number of affected parcels. Those are certainly good goals and in many cases a positive thing to avoid condemnation where possible. But in this instance, there's been no offer to acquire these folks' home or take steps to mitigate the safety concerns to them, among other things.
Thank you. We want to make sure we're asking these questions. You're raising very good issues, and we do want to make sure we have time to ask for this information. That's why we put the map back up on the screen.
Sure. Is it all right to proceed?
Yes. I just,
okay.
How much more of your remarks do we have?
Very brief. We put some of our remarks in writing already. I do want to make the point that the Pattersons are not the only individuals who have raised concerns about Caltrans' environmental review process, the adequacy or lack thereof. As I understand it, there are a couple of CEQA actions pending. There is a follow-up project to the currently scheduled project that we believe much of the right-of-way that's being acquired now is intended to be used for, and that it's been an error or inadequate to separately review things like noise, air quality impacts as part of separate projects so that the cumulative impacts of those things haven't been adequately captured as to the Pattersons. We're concerned about all the same things that have been raised in the CEQA lawsuits. And we also think it's been inadequate and not compliant with the government code 7267.2, the quote unquote appraisal that was completed, not done by a licensed appraiser, really did not address the severance damages to the property in any adequate fashion. To call it an appraisal and truly an offer of probable just compensation, we think is far from accurate. We would request that the commission ask Caltrans to take another look at this property, take another look at its approach and the adequacy of what it's done, and not give them the stamp to go forward and proceed with the lawsuit, putting these folks in a terrible position. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission might have.
Thank you very, very much. Commissioners, I know we have Commissioner Liu who had some questions. I'd just like to start out with really our chagrin at seeing an area that has 380% of the safety in collisions that are present on other roadways. This is a real shock to us, and we know we've been talking about many corridors like this, but considering the need for safety, we just did not want it to go unrecognized that this is a really compelling case you're making about the need for improvements along this corridor. So that's just a comment, and I will move to Commissioner Liu for his questions.
I guess my question is a bit along those same lines, but obviously sticking to the criteria that we have to consider, the one that has to do with least private injury is I guess my concern. And in the presentation, we were told that there will be the offer included for improvements. Can you provide for us what those improvements are? Because, I mean, in this case, it seems like the improvements may involve property improvements that would enhance safety.
Commissioner Liu, this is John Valentine, Chief North Region Right-of-Way, and I'll answer that question. Within the acquisition area, we had several improvements. Those improvements included some trees, crop-producing trees, a cedar tree, a palm tree, oak tree, and let's see, I think there was one other in there. It also included fences, gates, some irrigation lines. And within the offer, those were addressed. So within the acquisition area, which we're talking about the 1 acre, those items were addressed.
Okay, so but it doesn't include improvements like moving the house.
So to answer that, the proximity of the roadway to the house in the after condition, that's a severance damages. That was reviewed by the appraiser. It is a very good question because it caused me to also look at that question, talk to the appraiser, and also reach out to the market, talk to other appraisers in the local area, as well as appraisers throughout the state. But what we're finding in such a strong market is the market was not recognizing that proximity. In other words, other homes were also selling in the market without a further diminution with, well, in fact, even closer proximity to the home.
I am remiss in stating as part of this response to questions that Caltrans is being given an opportunity to respond to the representative of the property owner. So I would like to make sure that you have a chance to both respond to Commissioner Liu's questions and to the statements made by the property owner officially as part of the record.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can touch some of those. Regarding moving the vehicles closer to their home, it really becomes a safety issue that has been expressed. And we are proposing several improvements, such as including adding a clear recovery zone, wider shoulders, slow-moving vehicles, passing lanes, and rumble strips that will ultimately not only make it safer for the traveling public, but also will reduce the number of errand vehicles that potentially have more crashes. So let me just present an overall reduction of accidents by some of the improvements that we are proposing. Starting with shoulders width, which gives drivers more recovery area to regain control in the event of a roadway departure. That by itself reduces by 12% both hit objects and also rear end accidents. We also, the 20-foot clear recovery zone reduces also the same two type of crashes, hit objects and rear end, by 22%. And the rumble strips alerts inattempted drivers through noise and vibration, and that it reduced the hit object by up to 51%, and the head-on and sidewipes type of accidents anywhere between 44% to 64%.
Yeah.
The left, go ahead.
What seems to be missing, if you could respond to this, is what is being done to add maybe guardrails or other protections so that any vehicles that go off, that might potentially go off the road, won't be going into the property and especially the home of the property owner in question.
So, Commissioner, this is again John Valentine. I'll attempt to address that. The components that the project is adding, the safety components that the project is adding, strongly reduces the chances of an errant vehicle leaving the right-of-way. The severance damages that you're looking at, in other words, the loss of trees as a barrier, we have to look at the market. Does the market identify that as a further diminution in value? And we're not finding that it does. So not only does the design plan indicate that the highway is much safer, the market doesn't indicate a further damage because of the reduction or the elimination of trees within the front yard as a barrier.
Yeah, and I could add too, we have analyzed potential sound wall, but before I go into that, I just want to point out that after the work, if we continue as we planned, the distance to the house between the edge of travelway will be at 70 feet. We did consider a sound wall, but within the project, within the project limits, we have nearly 200 driveways. And the required sidelines and safety requirements for driveway access along this segment would require too many gaps. So it was determined that it was not feasible. There's no need for a concrete barrier. The project safety elements increase driver safety and as a result, resident safety. However, the property owners can install large rocks or concrete walls at their discretion.
So, again, this is John Valentine. I just want to tag on to that. I do stand by the team. The right-of-way office did do a valid offer based on Government Code 7267.2 in that it established an amount it believes to be just compensation. It looked at all aspects of the market, including the after-condition potential damages. But in addition to that, in discussions with the Pattersons, we're sensitive of those questions that have been brought up, both at the first level, the second level review. We've attempted to offer, we have made an offer through an administrative settlement to address sufficient funds that may allow the Pattersons to address their concerns regarding a barrier. And we continue to address those concerns. So the dialogue is still very much open with the Pattersons, and it'll continue to remain open until we resolve this.
Tim, would you weigh in here so you can help advise the commission as to our next steps?
Yes, I just wanted to remind the commission that anything that relates to the compensation is not something that the commission will be weighing in on. The key is to your evaluation as it relates to the 4 findings, and one of which is that the department has already supplied an offer per section 7267.2. So at this point, what the commission is evaluating is whether or not they will adopt the resolution to allow Caltrans to move forward acquiring the property for the purposes of constructing a safety project.
Madam Chairman, I would make the motion on this item if it's the appropriate time.
I have one more question and then please do make your motion. And that question is, Tim, that we're not necessarily asking about compensation. We're asking about additional safety measures, irregardless of the purchase of the property, but what the safety measures are between the property and the purchased property from Caltrans and the property remaining to make sure that there's safety for the property owners.
So as it relates to the compensation piece, that's correct. Now, if we're talking about negotiating what can be done as part of the offer, then that's not what the commission will be evaluating. The commission's evaluating the 4 items, and I'll read them off again. 1, the public, whether it meets the public interest and necessity required for the proposed project. The proposed project is planned or located in the manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good or least private injury, and that the property described in the resolution is necessary for the proposed project, and it's commission staff's opinion that they have met these conditions or these findings.
I want to recognize Commissioner Inman, and then I'd like to recognize that we have public comment as well. Commissioner Inman, your audio is not on.
I'll pass, Chair Norton. My question is outside of Tim's criteria.
Okay. Can we move to public comment?
Thank you, Chair Norton. This first written comment comes from Stephanie White. She writes, please keep in mind that this safety issue is a result of long-term poor design and planning over the years. It is not the fault of the Pattersons. Everything presented is steamrolling the decision to take property from the Pattersons' home and livelihood. What protections are being offered to the Pattersons from construction impacts, which will be substantial? I have experienced this firsthand, and after approval is given, the residents are expected to, quote, lump it. What cumulative impact studies have been done to show that this is a sustainable solution for the long term and will not increase traffic and development? I urge the commission to deny approval at this time. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we have a second public comment from Yvonne Garcia of Butte County Association of Government. Butte County Association of Government supports the department's position on this item.
Thank you very much. Does that conclude public comment?
Yes, Chair Norton, it does.
Okay, thank you. We will now entertain a motion if there's no further discussion from Caltrans.
Madam Chairwoman, I'd make that motion. Commissioner Davis.
Do you have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Douglas, will you please read the roll?
Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Eager. Commissioner Eager. Commissioner Gardino.
Oh, there we go. I was muted by the organizer. Aye.
Commissioner Gardino. I believe he's still absent. Commissioner Inman.
Sorry, I too was muted by the organizer, so we have a little system glitch, but aye.
Thank you, Commissioner. I also got muted by the organizer, and I am the organizer, so I don't know what happened. Commissioner Kehoe. Commissioner Liu.
Stand by, that might have been me. Let me unmute some people.
Commissioner Liu,
I vote no.
Commissioner Martinez,
Aye.
Commissioner Tavaloni, Commissioner Tavaloni, Chair Norton.
I show him with no audio.
Thank you. Commissioner Norton? The chair is muted.
She's unmuted. Self-muted.
I'm now unmuted. Thank you. I vote no.
Commissioner, the item is not approved. We did not meet the 8-fold vote threshold needed for a run appearance. A run.
Could you, is that because of audio issues?
Well, we know Commissioner Gardino and Commissioner Kehoe are not on at the moment. Commissioner Tavaloni, we had audio issues with. We did have 2 no votes. Commissioner Burke, we did not hear from.
Perhaps we can hold this when we have other commissioners return.
We can hold it
Madam
open.
Chair?
Thank you.
Yes.
I didn't really get an opportunity to explain my no vote, but I came to the conclusion on the second criterion, the proposed project is planned in a way that would be compatible with the least private injury. I didn't agree with that based on my inquiries. So that's why I voted no. I'd like people to know that. Thank you.
I voted no for the same reasons. So I thank you for clarifying that. I would have said the same. So I would like to have us hold this on the desk until we have all of our members back with full audio issues. And we can revote when Commissioner Kehoe is back.
Thank you.
And perhaps Commissioner Tavaloni is back on audio as well. In the meantime, I would like to call a short break and have us come back at 11:20 when we will take up item 57. Thank you very much.